Hi everyone, Ina here, clinical nutritionist and co-creator of My Custom Cleanse. And today we'll be talking about IBS. So IBS, or Irritable Bowel Syndrome, is if you have a myriad of different digestive complaints, anything from constipation to diarrhea to the alternation between the two, to gas, to bloating, discomfort, pain. And I'm here to tell you that if you're suffering from these things, you don't have to suffer anymore. Now, in conventional medicine, IBS is really more of a blanket term and it's a diagnosis of exclusion. So what that means is that if you end up seeing a doctor and they can't find anything that is sort of quote unquote wrong with you, then you get the diagnosis of IBS and usually are sent home with either laxatives or Imodium or fiber and just telling you that there's not much that you can do and that there is not really a cure. And I'm here to tell you that that doesn't have to be your life and you don't have to suffer. So in functional medicine, when we look at IBS, we look at it from the whole body perspective. And in order to really understand it and understand where it's coming from, we have to look at the different factors that contribute to it. And I find that there's three main factors, and in practice, these are the things that we look at. So first, we look at foods. The second, we look at your digestion. And the third is pathogens. So let's look at food. With food, what happens is that when we eat food, our body has to break down the food and then accept that food and get the nutrients from it. But oftentimes, due to various issues, from leaky gut to having overgrowth of certain infections, we become sensitive to food. So even if we were not sensitive to them in the past, even if we never had an issue before, we can become sensitive at any point. And then a food that was benign for you at one point can actually become problematic over time. So whether that food is some of the main allergens like gluten, dairy, corn, soy, but also it could be really anything. It could be broccoli or cucumbers for that matter, but any food can potentially become an allergen if your body has the conditions for it, whether it's overgrowth or certain stressors. And so then when you eat that food, the body becomes inflamed, the immune system starts to attack that food, and we get symptoms. And that's a little bit hard to test for just because tests usually look at immediate food allergies, not necessarily sensitivities. And so for this reason, when this happens, we really have to experiment a little bit on our own. And oftentimes, I'd say about 30% of patients find that if they do an elimination diet and they take out some of these hard to digest foods, their symptoms often get better, even if their testing shows that they're not allergic, so to speak, to that food. Now, the second thing that we want to look at is digestion. And when I refer to digestion, I'm talking about really the functional aspect of it. So not if, there is an issue structurally, but more how the digestive system actually functions. And so for that, we want to look at, is our stomach producing enough stomach acid? Because once the food goes into the stomach, it has to be broken down, and the stomach acid is one of the first things to do that. And then once the food moves from the stomach into the intestines, we have enzymes that come to further digest the food. And then we also have bile that's produced in the liver and stored in a gallbladder, and the bile also works on digesting food, specifically the fat in foods. So what we find is that it's possible that one out of those three parts may not be working efficiently, or it's possible that maybe even all three of those are not working. And if that's the case, then people aren't properly digesting their food, which can create constipation or diarrhea depending on the person. But it can also have people feel heavy, have a lot of gas or bloating, and sometimes people say that they feel like food just sits in their stomach, and that could be one of those things. So exploring that and asking your doctor or asking the practitioner you're working with to look at that can be really, really helpful. And then there's also natural things you can do. Like at Custom Cleanse, we have the Break It Down product, which is a really, really nice vegetarian broad spectrum enzyme that helps to digest the food. There's also hydrochloric acid supplements. We also have a supplement called Love Your Liver, which actually helps specifically with bile. So if you think of bile, bile is supposed to be nice and thin, so it goes in and it comes out from the liver, and then it gets in to break down the fats and emulsify those fats. But a lot of times when the bile is very thick and sludgy, it's almost like a maple syrup container. When you try to pour the maple syrup and nothing comes out because it's all sort of stuck in there, that's what happens with bile. So a product like Love Your Liver is a wonderful supplement to help to support that if bile is one of your issues. And so then the third thing is pathogens. And I find that this is a very important component, and probably about 50% of people who have IBS, maybe even more, have an issue with that. So pathogens are going to be microbes that are there that really shouldn't be. So in our intestines, ideally, we have a balance of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And when that balance becomes off is where problems often arise. And so for these pathogens, it could be fungal, where something like yeast, another term for that you guys may have heard is Candida. So when that starts to overgrow, that can offset the balance of the good guys. It can also be bacteria, and there's a term that has been very popular recently, and you guys may have heard of it, called SIBO, or small intestine bacterial overgrowth. That's where the bacteria from the large intestine go up to the small intestine, and they're not supposed to do that. Things are supposed to move down, not up. So when they move up to the large intestine and start to grow there where they're not supposed to, that can create problems. So when you have bacteria somewhere where you shouldn't, or you have more bad guys than good guys, and the balance is off, that creates a lot of problems because these bacteria then ferment your food. And I should say bacteria and yeast, and even sometimes parasites, but any of these, we'll call them bugs sort of all together. They ferment your food, and that fermentation process creates air. And what's air? Gas. And that's what creates distension, bloating, and a lot of times that sharp pain that you guys may feel, almost like that gas pain that we call it, that could be created by these bugs. Now, thankfully, you don't have to take a lot of harsh medications to get rid of them. There are some really wonderful herbal combinations, and sometimes they're referred to as herbal antibiotics or herbal antifungals. And we like to use things that actually have a broad spectrum feel to them. So they're antimicrobial altogether. They're antibacterial, they're antifungal, they also have antiparasitic properties. And what they do is they help to kill off some of the bad bugs. But the nice thing too is they're fairly gentle to the good bugs. So they're different than taking an antibiotic, which kills everything. Antibiotics don't know what's good, what's bad. The natural antimicrobials are very potent, but they're much more gentle on your good guys. And so at Custom Cleanse, we use things like our Clean Slate product and the Absolution, which has a really nice synergistic blend of different antimicrobials, and that really helps to kill off the bad bugs. And then we would follow that up with a good quality probiotic, such as Belly Balance, or if there's another probiotic that you guys have at home that you like. And then the probiotics put in the good guys once you've killed off the bad. And so it's really, really important to look at these factors, because IBS really is a combination of some of these things, and in some cases, many of these things that have gone awry. So it's not a diagnosis where we don't know what's wrong with you, so you have this and there's nothing to do. There is actually a lot that you can do. So if you explore these in more detail, you can get to a solution and you could start feeling better. Often people could start feeling better as quickly as 2 to 3 weeks. So please take a look at these things. You can always email us, call us. You can also ask your doctor or your naturopathic practitioner. And just know that if you're experiencing these digestive complaints, you don't have to suffer. There are definitely things that you can do. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. We're here to help. Bye.